Hey story enthusiasts! This is Fanfic Universe bringing you another gem. In this video, we present to you what if Harry was the secret apprentice of Grindelwald and destroyed the ministry before the first year ended. If you enjoy these stories as much as we enjoy sharing them, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Let's dive in. Chapter 1, The boy who was chosen twice. The cupboard under the stairs was dark and cramped, but 7-year-old Harry Potter had long since stopped minding. In the darkness, he could practice without being seen. A small marble rolled across his palm, hovering a centimeter above his skin. Harry's eyes narrowed in concentration as he willed the marble to rise higher. It wobbled, then shot upward, nearly hitting the sloped ceiling before he caught it with his mind and guided it in a figure-8 pattern through the dusty air. "Boy! Are you awake in there?" Aunt Petunia's shrill voice shattered his concentration. The marble dropped, and Harry caught it in his fist just as the cupboard door swung open. "Yes, Aunt Petunia," he said, slipping the marble into his pocket. "The garden needs weeding before Vernon gets home." Her pinched face showed no emotion beyond irritation. "And don't you dare come back inside until every weed is gone." Harry nodded and slipped past her, careful not to make eye contact. At 7 years old, he'd already mastered the art of appearing smaller and more docile than he truly was. It was better when they thought him broken. Outside in the garden, Harry methodically pulled weeds while his mind wandered. 3 months had passed since the strange dreams began, dreams of power and purpose that felt more like memories than fantasies. Sometimes he woke with words in his mind, instructions that made no sense until he tried them. That was how he'd learned to move objects without touching them. As the sun beat down on his back, Harry sensed a presence. He turned to see an elderly man standing on the sidewalk beyond the garden fence. The man wore an ordinary brown coat and hat, but something about his eyes, piercing blue even from a distance, made Harry freeze. The stranger smiled. "Hello, young man. You seem to be working quite hard on such a warm day." Harry glanced toward the house before responding. "I'm just doing my chores, sir." "Admirable dedication." The man's accent was strange, not quite English, not quite German. "Tell me, have you ever made things happen? Things you couldn't explain?" Harry's heart hammered in his chest. He knew he should run inside, knew that Aunt Petunia would screech about talking to strangers, but something held him in place. "Sometimes," he admitted softly. The man nodded as though this confirmed something. "My name is Mr. Gray. I believe we have much to discuss, Harry Potter." "How do you know my name?" Mr. Gray's smile deepened. "Everyone in our world knows your name." "Our world?" Harry whispered. "The world you truly belong to." Mr. Gray glanced toward the house. "I cannot stay long today. Your guardians would not approve. But I will return." In the meantime, he withdrew a small, worn book from his coat and placed it atop the garden wall. "Read this when you're alone. Hide it well." Before Harry could respond, Mr. Gray turned and walked away, his gait surprisingly spry for a man of his apparent age. Harry quickly grabbed the book and stuffed it under his oversized shirt just as Aunt Petunia's face appeared in the kitchen window. That night, by the dim light filtering through the cupboard vents, Harry opened the mysterious book. Its pages contained handwritten notes on focusing one's will, on feeling the energy that flowed through all living things. The writing was elegant yet precise, with small diagrams in the margins. No author was listed, no title on the cover, just page after page of what seemed like instructions. "Clear your mind," the first page read. "Feel the power that resides within you. It answers to your will alone." Harry practiced until his eyes grew heavy, the marble now spinning in complex patterns above his palm. As he drifted to sleep, he could almost hear Mr. Gray's voice, "You are meant for greatness, Harry Potter. Greater than they could ever imagine." Over the next 3 years, Mr. Gray's visits became the anchor of Harry's existence. They were always careful, meeting in the park when Harry was sent out to give the Dursleys peace, or during Dudley's birthday outings when Harry was left with Mrs. Figg but would slip away for an hour. The Ministry monitors underage magic, Mr. Gray explained during their 5th meeting, but wandless magic leaves different traces. They're not looking for it because so few can master it. That's your advantage. What's the Ministry? 10-year-old Harry asked. Mr. Gray's expression darkened. The institution that failed your parents. The bureaucracy that maintains order at the expense of true justice. You'll understand more when you're ready. Harry absorbed everything Mr. Gray taught him, how to sense magical signatures, how to shield his thoughts from intrusion, how to channel his power without the crutch of incantations. But most importantly, he learned about the magical world that had abandoned him to the Dursleys. Your parents didn't die in a car crash, Mr. Gray revealed one cold afternoon as they sat on a park bench, glamour charms ensuring no passerby would notice them. They were murdered by a dark wizard called Voldemort. You survived his killing curse, the only person ever to do so. That scar on your forehead marks you as extraordinary. Harry touched the lightning-shaped scar that the Dursleys had always told him came from the crash that killed his parents. Why would he want to kill a baby? Because of a prophecy. Because he feared what you might become. Mr. Gray studied Harry's face. And he was right to fear you, though not for the reasons he believed. Who are you really? Harry asked, the question he'd been holding back for years. You know too much to be just a friend. Mr. Gray smiled. I am someone who recognizes greatness when he sees it. Someone who once tried to change our world and failed. Someone who won't make the same mistakes twice. His blue eyes seemed to glow momentarily. When you receive your Hogwarts letter, everything will begin. You must appear ordinary, malleable. The headmaster, Dumbledore, sees much, but even he has blind spots. Dumbledore, Harry repeated. The name felt significant on his tongue. He left you here, with these people who despise magic. Mr. Gray gestured toward Privet Drive. Remember that, when you meet him. Remember who truly came for you. On Harry's 11th birthday, everything changed just as Mr. Gray had promised. The half-giant Hagrid burst into the miserable shack where Uncle Vernon had taken them to escape the flood of Hogwarts letters. Harry feigned surprise and wonder at the revelation of his magical heritage, asking naive questions while carefully gauging Hagrid's responses. Why would someone want to kill my parents? He asked, wide-eyed. Evil, that's why, Hagrid said gruffly. You know who was as evil as they come. But there must have been a reason, Harry pressed. Even evil people have reasons. Hagrid shifted uncomfortably. Some say he was afraid of Dumbledore. Only wizard you know who ever feared, Dumbledore was. Harry filed this information away. Mr. Gray had taught him to collect every scrap of intelligence, to build a complete picture one piece at a time. And what happened to Vol, sorry, you know who after he tried to kill me? Vanished. Some say he died, but I don't believe it. Not enough human in him to die, if you ask me. That night, as Hagrid snored on the collapsed sofa, Harry stared at the ceiling and whispered, I received my letter, Mr. Gray. Everything has begun. Miles away, in a hidden chamber beneath an abandoned manor, Gellert Grindelwald smiled. The boy was ready. Diagon Alley overwhelmed the senses, the colors, sounds, and magical energy swirling through the hidden shopping district made Harry momentarily forget his practiced restraint. He stared openly, allowing his genuine wonder to show. This would be expected of a boy raised by muggles, discovering magic for the first time. First stop, Gringotts, Hagrid announced, leading Harry toward the imposing white marble building. Inside the Wizarding Bank, Harry observed the goblins with interest. Mr. Gray had taught him about magical beings and their subjugation by wizard kind. They look very intelligent, Harry commented to Hagrid. Clever as they come, goblins, Hagrid agreed, but not the friendliest of beasts. Harry noted Hagrid's casual speciesism but said nothing. When they reached his vault and he saw the piles of gold his parents had left him, he made sure to ask, is this a lot? I don't know the conversion to regular money. You're well off, Harry. This'll see you through school easy. Harry took more galleons than he immediately needed, anticipating Mr. Grey's instructions to acquire certain items without Hagrid's knowledge. Their next stop was Ollivander's for his wand. The wand-maker's silvery eyes unsettled Harry. It felt as though the old man could see through his carefully constructed facade. Curious, Ollivander murmured after Harry finally matched with a holly and phoenix feather wand. Very curious. Sorry, said Harry, but what's curious? I remember every wand I've ever sold, Mr. Potter. Every single wand. It so happens that the phoenix whose tail feather is in your wand, gave another feather, just one other. It is very curious indeed that you should be destined for this wand when its brother gave you that scar. Harry's hand instinctively touched his forehead. Voldemort had the brother wand? Ollivander flinched at the name but nodded. The wand chooses the wizard, Mr. Potter. I think we must expect great things from you. After all, he who must not be named did great things, terrible, yes, but great. Outside the shop, while Hagrid bought Harry an ice cream, the boy contemplated Ollivander's words. Great things. Terrible, but great. Was that to be his legacy as well? When Hagrid excused himself to use the facilities at the Leaky Cauldron, Harry seized his opportunity. He slipped down a narrow side alley Mr. Grey had described, Nocturne Alley, where the darker aspects of magical commerce thrived. Moving quickly, he located a small, grimy shop with no name on its door. Inside, a wizened witch with unnaturally black hair looked up from her counter. Lost, boy? She asked, her voice like dry leaves. No, ma'am. Harry stood straight, projecting confidence he didn't entirely feel. I need a wand. Untraceable. I was told you might help. She laughed, a sound like breaking glass. And who told you such a thing, child? Mr. Grey. The witch's expression changed instantly. She studied Harry more carefully, noting his scar. I see. Well, that's different, isn't it? She disappeared into a back room and returned with a dusty box. Dragon heartstring and blackthorn. Temperamental but powerful. 12 galleons, and I never saw you. Harry paid without haggling and slipped the wand into his sleeve just as Mr. Grey had taught him. Back in Diagon Alley, he rejoined Hagrid, who hadn't noticed his brief absence. Just need your books now, and then we're done, the half-giant said cheerfully. At Flourish and Blots, Harry selected his required textbooks plus several additional volumes on magical theory and history that weren't on his first-year list. When Hagrid raised an eyebrow, Harry smiled innocently. I want to catch up, since I don't know anything about magic yet. Hagrid patted his shoulder. Your parents would be proud. Your mum was a right bookworm herself. Really? Harry asked, genuinely interested. Mr. Grey had told him little about Lily and James Potter. What else was she like? As Hagrid launched into stories about Harry's parents, the boy absorbed every detail, searching for information Mr. Grey might have withheld. Knowledge was power, and Harry intended to gather as much as possible before the real game began. The final month with the Dursleys passed in strained silence. After Hagrid's visit and the pig's tail he'd given Dudley, Vernon and Petunia seemed torn between fear of Harry's newfound knowledge and their habitual contempt. They settled for ignoring him completely, which suited Harry perfectly. In the solitude of his new bedroom, grudgingly given after the Hogwarts letters addressed to the cupboard under the stairs, Harry practiced with his blackthorn wand while reading ahead in his textbooks. The wand felt different from his holly one, where the holly wand channeled his power smoothly, the blackthorn demanded it, pulling magic from him with hungry intensity. The night before his departure for Hogwarts, Harry sensed a familiar magical signature outside his window. Mr. Grey stood in the shadows across the street, barely visible except for those piercing blue eyes. Harry raised his hand in acknowledgement, and Mr. Grey nodded once before disappearing with a soft pop of apparition. Tomorrow, everything would change. Harry had spent years preparing for this moment, learning to hide his true abilities, to observe without being noticed, to identify potential allies and enemies. Hogwarts would be both his training ground and his first battlefield. As he packed his trunk, Harry's fingers brushed against the small journal Mr. Gray had given him for secure communication. The enchanted pages would transmit his written words directly to a matching journal in Mr. Gray's possession. No owls to intercept, no fluke calls to monitor. Perfect secrecy. "I'm ready," Harry whispered, though no one was there to hear. Platform 9 3/4 bustled with activity as wizard families bid farewell to children bound for Hogwarts. Harry, having navigated the barrier with feigned hesitation after asking the Weasley family for help, now stood surveying the crowd from a strategic position near the train's rear. He watched the Weasley family with particular interest. Mr. Gray had briefed him on the major wizarding families. The Weasleys were poor but numerous, with connections throughout magical society and a reputation for being firmly in Dumbledore's camp. The youngest boy, Ron, would be in Harry's year. A potential ally, or at least a useful source of information. Nearby, a round-faced boy was frantically searching for something. "Gran, I've lost my toad again," he moaned to a formidable-looking elderly witch wearing a stuffed vulture hat. "Oh, Neville," the woman sighed with evident disappointment. Neville Longbottom, Harry recognized from Mr. Gray's intelligence. Born the day before Harry, also potentially connected to the prophecy that had marked Harry for death. Currently appeared harmless, but worth watching. A family of platinum blondes caught Harry's attention next. The father's aristocratic bearing and the disdainful tilt of his chin marked him as Lucius Malfoy, former Death Eater who had claimed imperious influence. The son, Draco, would be another classmate, one to approach with caution. Harry boarded the train early, selecting a compartment that offered good visibility of the corridor while allowing him to sit with his back to a solid wall. He opened A History of Magic and pretended to read while continuing his observations. As expected, Ron Weasley eventually poked his head into the compartment. "Anyone sitting there?" he asked, pointing to the seat opposite Harry. "Everywhere else is full." Harry gestured welcomingly. "It's all free." Ron sat down, glancing curiously at Harry's forehead. Harry had deliberately arranged his hair to partially cover his scar, visible enough to be noticed eventually, but not immediately obvious. "Are you really Harry Potter?" Ron blurted after a few minutes of awkward silence. Harry closed his book. "Yes," he said simply. "And do you really have the, you know?" Ron pointed at Harry's forehead. Harry pushed back his hair to reveal the lightning scar. "Yes, but I don't remember anything about that night. Just a flash of green light." This was a calculated lie. Through certain meditative techniques Mr. Gray had taught him, Harry had recovered fragmented memories of that night, his mother's pleading, Voldemort's high cold laugh, and the rushing sound of the killing curse. But such information was best kept private. "Wow," Ron breathed. "I thought it might be one of Fred and George's jokes." Their conversation was interrupted by a round-faced boy opening the compartment door. "Sorry," said Neville Longbottom, "but have you seen a toad?" "No, sorry," said Harry, offering a sympathetic smile. After Neville left, Ron began explaining about the wizarding world, magical families, and Quidditch. Harry listened attentively, feigning ignorance while noting useful details about wizarding culture that Mr. Gray hadn't covered. "What about you?" Ron asked eventually. "What's it like growing up with Muggles?" "Horrible," Harry said honestly. "My aunt and uncle hate magic. They never told me I was a wizard or how my parents really died." "That's mental," Ron exclaimed. "How could they keep something like that from you?" Harry shrugged. "They told me my parents died in a car crash. Said my father was a drunk." "A car crash? A car crash kill Lily and James Potter?" Ron was indignant on Harry's behalf. "That's an outrage." Harry felt a genuine flicker of warmth toward the redhead. Perhaps Ron Weasley would indeed make a valuable ally. Their compartment door slid open again, this time revealing a girl with bushy brown hair and rather large front teeth. "Has anyone seen a toad?" "A boy named Neville has lost one," she said in a bossy voice. "We've already told him we haven't seen it," said Ron, but the girl wasn't listening. She was looking at Harry with sudden interest. "Are you Harry Potter?" "I know all about you, of course. I got a few extra books for background reading, and you're in Modern Magical History and The Rise and Fall of the Dark Arts and Great Wizarding Events of the 20th Century. Am I?" Harry asked, genuinely surprised. Mr. Gray hadn't mentioned this. "What do they say?" "Well, not much about you personally, just that you survived when no one else has ever survived the killing curse, and you know who disappeared the same night. No one seems to know how you did it." Harry studied the girl with new interest. She was clearly intelligent and well-read, potentially very useful. "I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name." "Oh, I'm Hermione Granger." She extended her hand formally. "Pleased to meet you," Harry said, shaking it. He noticed her slight hesitation before adding, "Are your parents magical too?" "No, they're dentists." "It was ever such a surprise when I got my letter, but I was ever so pleased, of course. I mean, it's the very best school of witchcraft there is, I've heard. My mum and dad were magical, but I was raised by my muggle relatives," Harry offered, creating an immediate point of connection. "So all this is new to me too." Hermione's expression brightened. "Really? Have you tried any spells yet?" "I've tried a few simple ones just for practice, and they've all worked for me. I've read through the books, but I haven't had much chance to practice." Another calculated lie. "Well, you'd better change into your robes. I expect we'll be arriving soon." With that, Hermione departed, leaving Harry to consider her potential. Intelligent, ambitious, muggle-born, she would understand firsthand the prejudice of wizarding society. She seemed eager to prove herself, perhaps insecure about her non-magical heritage. With the right approach, she might become one of his most valuable assets. The remainder of the journey passed with Harry gathering information from Ron about Hogwarts, the Four Houses, and the wizarding world in general. When Draco Malfoy made his appearance, flanked by two larger boys, Harry observed the immediate tension between Ron and Malfoy with interest. "They're saying all down the train that Harry Potter's in this compartment," Malfoy said, eyes fixed on Harry. "So it's you, is it?" "Yes," Harry replied, studying the blonde boy. Here was the son of a Death Eater, raised on pure-blood ideology. A potential enemy, but also a potential source of information about Voldemort's former circle. "This is Crabbe and Goyle," Malfoy said casually, noticing Harry's assessment of his companions. "And my name's Malfoy, Draco Malfoy." Ron gave a slight cough, which might have been hiding a snigger. Malfoy looked at him. "Think my name's funny, do you? No need to ask who you are. My father told me all the Weasleys have red hair, freckles, and more children than they can afford." He turned back to Harry. "You'll soon find out some wizarding families are much better than others, Potter. You don't want to go making friends with the wrong sort. I can help you there." He held out his hand to shake Harry's, but Harry didn't take it immediately. Instead, he met Malfoy's eyes directly. "I appreciate the offer, Malfoy, but I think I can figure out the wrong sort for myself." It wasn't a direct rejection, that would make an enemy unnecessarily, but neither was it acceptance. Harry needed to establish himself as independent, not easily swayed by others' opinions. Malfoy's pale cheeks flushed pink. "I'd be careful if I were you, Potter. Unless you're a bit politer, you'll go the same way as your parents." Harry's eyes hardened slightly. "Is that a threat, Malfoy?" Something in Harry's tone made Malfoy step back involuntarily. For just a moment, Harry had allowed a glimpse of his true self to show through the naive facade. "Come on," Malfoy muttered to his companions, and they left. Ron looked at Harry with new respect. "That was brilliant. Did you see his face? Harry simply shrugged, mentally noting that he'd need to be more careful with his control. Even momentary slips could reveal too much. The first years crossed the lake in small boats, giving Harry his first view of Hogwarts Castle. Despite all his preparation, the sight momentarily took his breath away. The ancient castle radiated magical power that Harry could feel washing over him like waves. Here was history, power, and knowledge spanning centuries, and somewhere within those walls were secrets that could help him fulfill the destiny Mr. Grey had promised. Professor McGonagall led them through the entrance hall, explaining the house system and the importance of the sorting ceremony. Harry listened with half an ear, more interested in studying his future classmates' reactions. Fear, excitement, nervousness, all useful indicators of character. When the ghosts made their appearance, floating through the wall and arguing about someone named Peeves, Harry was the only first year who didn't jump or gasp. He'd been expecting something of the sort, based on Mr. Grey's descriptions. Finally, they entered the Great Hall, a vast, magnificent space with thousands of floating candles and a ceiling bewitched to look like the night sky. At the front of the hall sat the Sorting Hat on a four-legged stool, old and patched and frayed. When the hat finished its song about the four houses, Professor McGonagall began calling students forward alphabetically to be sorted. Harry watched each sorting carefully, noting which students went where. Hermione Granger went to Gryffindor after nearly a minute under the hat, as did Neville Longbottom. Draco Malfoy was instantly sorted into Slytherin. Potter, Harry. McGonagall called at last. Whispers broke out across the hall as Harry stepped forward. He could feel hundreds of eyes on him as the hat dropped over his head, obscuring his view. Said a small voice in his ear. Difficult. Very difficult. Plenty of courage, I see. Not a bad mind either. There's talent, oh my goodness, yes, and a thirst to prove yourself. But what's this? Harry felt the hat probing deeper, past his surface thoughts to the carefully constructed mental shields Mr. Grey had taught him to build. The hat pushed against them curiously. Interesting, the hat murmured. Such mental discipline in one so young, and secrets, oh yes, deep secrets. You've been taught well, Mr. Potter. Too well for a child of 11 who was supposedly raised by muggles. Harry tensed. He hadn't anticipated the hat would be able to penetrate so deeply. Don't worry, the hat whispered, seeming almost amused. I cannot reveal what I find in students' minds. That's not my purpose. But I must say, in all my centuries, I've rarely encountered such ambition. Such careful planning. Slytherin would help you on your way to greatness, no doubt about that. Not Slytherin, Harry thought firmly. Too obvious. Too many watching eyes. Not Slytherin, eh? Are you sure? You could be great, you know, it's all here in your head, and Slytherin would help you on the way to greatness, no doubt about that. Gryffindor, Harry thought back. Where they'll least expect what I truly am. The hat seemed to chuckle. Playing a long game, are we? Very well then, Gryffindor. The last word was shouted for the entire hall to hear. The Gryffindor table erupted in wild cheers. Harry removed the hat and walked toward his new house, a small smile on his face. The Weasley twins were chanting, "We got Potter. We got Potter." As he sat down, Harry glanced toward the high table, where he got his first real look at Albus Dumbledore. The headmaster's silver beard gleamed in the candlelight as he smiled benignly at Harry, raising his goblet slightly in greeting. Harry nodded respectfully while assessing the powerful wizard. This was the man who had left him with the Dursleys, who had presumably known of his parents' deaths yet never checked on his welfare. This was the man Mr. Grey had warned him about. Beside Dumbledore sat a sallow-faced professor with a hooked nose and greasy black hair, who was staring at Harry with undisguised loathing. Turning to Percy Weasley, Harry asked quietly, "Who's the teacher talking to Professor Quirrell?" "That's Professor Snape. He teaches potions, but he doesn't want to. Everyone knows he's after Quirrell's job. Knows an awful lot about the dark arts, Snape." Harry studied Snape with interest. According to Mr. Grey, Snape had been a Death Eater who switched sides before Voldemort's fall. His hatred for Harry was curious, perhaps connected to James Potter. Another piece of the puzzle to investigate. After the feast, Percy led the first-year Gryffindors up to their dormitory in Gryffindor Tower. As Harry climbed into his four-poster bed, exhausted but mind racing with all he'd observed, he couldn't help but feel a surge of satisfaction. Phase 1 was complete. He was at Hogwarts, sorted into the House of the Brave and Reckless, where his true nature would remain hidden behind a carefully crafted persona of naive heroism. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. Classes started the next day, and Harry immediately established his strategy: perform well enough to avoid negative attention, but never so exceptionally as to draw undue notice. In Transfiguration, he succeeded in turning his match into a needle after several attempts, earning an approving nod from Professor McGonagall, but only after Hermione had already accomplished the feat in Charms. He practiced the wand movements without actually channeling his full power, creating the impression of a talented but still learning first year. Only in the privacy of his bed at night, with silencing charms carefully placed, did Harry practice the more advanced magic Mr. Grey had taught him, using his untraceable blackthorn wand. During their first potions lesson, Harry experienced Professor Snape's animosity firsthand. The moment the potions master reached Harry's name during roll call, his lip curled. "Ah, yes," he said softly, "Harry Potter. Our new celebrity." Draco Malfoy and his friends Crabbe and Goyle sniggered behind their hands. Snape finished calling the names and looked up at the class, his black eyes cold and empty. "You are here to learn the subtle science and exact art of potion making," he began. His voice was barely more than a whisper, but they caught every word. "As there is little foolish wand-waving here, many of you will hardly believe this is magic. I don't expect you will really understand the beauty of the softly simmering cauldron with its shimmering fumes, the delicate power of liquids that creep through human veins, bewitching the mind, and snaring the senses. I can teach you how to bottle fame, brew glory, even stopper death, if you aren't as big a bunch of dunderheads as I usually have to teach." Silence followed this little speech. Harry kept his expression neutral, though he was internally intrigued by Snape's obvious passion for his subject. Beneath the bitterness and contempt, there seemed to be genuine artistry. "Potter," said Snape suddenly. "What would I get if I added powdered root of asphodel to an infusion of wormwood?" Harry knew the answer immediately: the draught of living death, a powerful sleeping potion. Mr. Grey had ensured he memorized key potions' ingredients before arriving at Hogwarts. But revealing such knowledge would raise questions about how a Muggle-raised boy could possibly know such things. "I don't know, sir," he said, forcing himself to look confused rather than calculating. Snape's lips curled into a sneer. "Fame clearly isn't everything." He ignored Hermione's raised hand. "Let's try again. Potter, where would you look if I told you to find me a bezoar?" Again, Harry knew: a stone taken from the stomach of a goat, an antidote to most poisons. Again, he feigned ignorance. "I don't know, sir." "Thought you wouldn't open a book before coming, Potter." Snape was still ignoring Hermione's quivering hand. Harry forced himself to maintain eye contact with Snape, careful to keep his mental shields firmly in place. He had the distinct impression that Snape was attempting to read his mind, legilimency, Mr. Grey had called it. "What is the difference, Potter, between monkshood and wolfsbane?" This time, Harry allowed a flash of recognition to cross his face, as though he'd read this particular fact and was struggling to recall it. "Aren't they the same plant, sir? Also called aconite, I think." He made it sound like a question. Snape looked momentarily taken aback. "Correct," he said coldly. "Though I see you haven't bothered to learn where to find a bezoar or what asphodel and wormwood create." He turned away. "For your information, asphodel and wormwood make a sleeping potion so powerful it is known as the draught of living death. A bezoar is a stone taken from the stomach of a goat and will save you from most poisons." Throughout the rest of the lesson, Snape criticized everyone except Malfoy, whom he seemed to favor. When Neville managed to melt Seamus's cauldron, creating a noxious cloud of acid green smoke and angry red boils on their skin, Snape somehow blamed Harry. "You, Potter, why didn't you tell him not to add the quills? Thought he'd make you look good if he got it wrong, did you? That's another point you've lost for Gryffindor." Harry bit back a retort. Antagonizing Snape would accomplish nothing at this stage. Better to appear cowed while observing the professor's biases and weaknesses. After class, Ron was furious on Harry's behalf. "Cheer up," he said as they climbed the steps out of the dungeon. "Snape's always taking points off Fred and George." Harry nodded, but his mind was elsewhere, calculating. Snape clearly had personal animosity toward him, beyond simple house rivalry. This could be a problem, or an opportunity, if properly manipulated. As they passed a corridor, Harry noticed Hermione sitting alone on a window ledge, a book open on her lap but her gaze distant. Her eyes looked slightly red. "You go ahead," Harry told Ron. "I'll catch up." Ron shrugged and continued toward Gryffindor Tower while Harry approached Hermione. She quickly wiped her eyes when she noticed him. "Oh, hello Harry," she said, trying to sound casual. "I was just doing some extra reading for charms." Harry sat beside her. "Are you all right? You seem upset." Hermione hesitated, then sighed. "It's nothing, really. Just. I heard some Slytherins talking after potions. About me. About how a mudblood shouldn't be showing up purebloods in class." Harry's expression hardened. "That word, mudblood, it's a slur for muggleborns, isn't it?" "Yes," Hermione whispered. "Apparently some wizards think being born to non-magical parents makes your blood dirty somehow." She tried to laugh, but it came out more like a sob. "It's ridiculous, of course. I've read that magical ability has nothing to do with ancestry. Some of the greatest wizards in history were muggle-born." "It's not just ridiculous," Harry said quietly. "It's wrong. Fundamentally wrong." Hermione looked at him, surprised by the intensity in his voice. "The wizarding world is broken, Hermione," Harry continued, choosing his words carefully. "We're separated from muggles, living in secrecy, governed by a ministry that enforces outdated laws and traditions. Meanwhile, magical beings like goblins, centaurs, and house elves are treated as lesser creatures. And for what? So a few pureblood families can maintain their position at the top." Hermione stared at him. "Harry, how do you know all this? You've only been in the wizarding world for a month." Harry realized he'd revealed too much, too quickly. He adjusted his approach. "I've been reading. And observing. Haven't you noticed how the older students talk about the ministry? How even the teachers seem resigned to the way things are?" He shook his head. "I thought when I left the Dursleys, I was leaving prejudice behind. But it's here too, just in a different form." Hermione was quiet for a moment, processing his words. "I thought it was just me," she finally said. "That I was being too sensitive." "No," Harry said firmly. "You're seeing clearly. The question is, what are we going to do about it?" "Do?" Hermione looked startled. "We're just first years. What can we do?" "Learn," Harry said simply. "Gather knowledge. Build connections. Prepare ourselves for the future." He met her eyes. "I have a feeling things are going to change in the wizarding world, Hermione. And when they do, I want to be on the right side of that change. Don't you?" Hermione studied him, her analytical mind clearly working through his words. "Yes," she said finally. "I do." Harry smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Then maybe we can help each other. Study together. Share what we learn." "I'd like that," Hermione said, returning his smile. As they walked back to Gryffindor Tower together, Harry felt a surge of satisfaction. His first recruitment had begun. Hermione Granger, with her brilliant mind and outsider status, would be a valuable ally in the coming revolution. Mr. Gray would be pleased. That night, as his dormmates slept, Harry wrote in his enchanted journal, "First week complete. Making connections. The groundwork is being laid." The reply came minutes later, the ink appearing as though an invisible hand were writing across the page, "Excellent. Remember, patience, observation, selective trust. The ministry's foundations are already crumbling. When the time comes, a single push will bring it all down." Harry traced the words with his finger, feeling the weight of destiny settling around him. He was no longer just the boy who lived, he was the boy who was chosen twice. First by Voldemort's hubris, then by Grindelwald's vision. And when his work was done, the wizarding world would never be the same. Chapter 2, Foundations of Power. The late September rain lashed against the windows of the Gryffindor common room as Harry and Hermione huddled near the fireplace, surrounded by books and parchment. To casual observers, they appeared to be two first-years struggling through their transfiguration homework. In reality, they were discussing something far more significant. The International Statute of Secrecy was established in 1692, Hermione whispered, tracing her finger along a timeline in magical government through the ages. But look at what happened immediately afterward. Harry leaned closer, examining the small print beneath the date. Goblin rebellions intensified, first anti-werewolf legislation. House Elf Registration Act. Exactly, Hermione said, her eyes bright with the thrill of discovery. Once wizards formally separated from muggles, they started classifying and restricting other magical beings. It's as though isolation made them more afraid of anything different. Harry nodded, mentally filing away this information. Mr. Gray had explained the broad strokes of magical history, but Hermione's research was uncovering nuanced details that added depth to his understanding. "And it's still happening," Harry murmured. "Professor Binns mentioned the werewolf registry was expanded just 5 years ago." "It's wrong," Hermione said firmly. "Intelligent beings treated like animals just because they're different." Harry studied Hermione's indignant expression. In the weeks since their conversation after potions class, she'd proven herself not just academically brilliant but morally aligned with his vision, though she still didn't know the full extent of it. "We should expand our group," Harry said casually, as though the thought had just occurred to him. "Find others who see what we see." "Like who?" Hermione asked. Before Harry could respond, Ron flopped into the chair beside them, scattering his own homework across the table. "McGonagall's trying to kill us with all this work," he groaned. "What are you two always whispering about anyway?" Harry and Hermione exchanged quick glances. "Just some extra research," Harry said with a shrug. "History of magical law." Ron made a face. "Sounds boring." "Actually," Harry said, deliberately keeping his tone light, "we found some interesting stuff about how the Ministry treats magical creatures. Did you know they nearly classified goblins as beasts rather than beings? Even though they're clearly intelligent." "Yeah, well, goblins are nasty pieces of work," Ron said dismissively. "My brother Bill works with them at Gringotts. Says they're never satisfied, always complaining about wizards stealing their relics or whatever." Harry seized the opportunity. "But what if they're right? What if wizards did steal from them?" Ron looked startled. "What do you mean?" "Think about it. The goblins make these amazing magical objects, and then wizards decide they should belong to the entire wizarding community once the original purchaser dies. How is that fair?" Ron frowned. "I never thought about it like that." "That's because no one wants us to think about it," Hermione interjected. "The history books barely mention the goblin perspective." Harry watched Ron carefully, noting the flicker of uncertainty in his expression. Ron Weasley was loyal and good-hearted, if somewhat prejudiced by his wizarding upbringing. With time and careful guidance, he might become a valuable ally, especially given his family's extensive connections. "Anyway," Harry said, changing the subject before pushing too far, "are you ready for flying lessons tomorrow?" I've been looking forward to trying a broom. As Ron launched into an enthusiastic explanation of Quidditch, Harry caught Hermione's eye. She gave him a small nod of understanding. The seed had been planted. Flying lessons the next day provided Harry with an unexpected opportunity. When Neville Longbottom fell from his broom and broke his wrist, Madame Hooch took him to the hospital wing, leaving the first years unsupervised. Draco Malfoy immediately seized Neville's Remembrall from the ground. "Look what the idiot dropped," Malfoy said, holding up the glass ball. "Maybe if he'd given this a squeeze, he'd have remembered to fall on his fat arse." The Slytherins laughed, but Harry saw something beyond simple bullying. This was about power and dominance, core elements of pure-blood ideology that Mr. Grey had explained to him. Malfoy was asserting his perceived superiority over a lesser wizard like Neville. "Give it here, Malfoy," Harry said quietly. Everyone fell silent. Malfoy smiled nastily. "No, I think I'll leave it somewhere for Longbottom to find." He leapt onto his broomstick and rose into the air. "How about on the roof?" Harry could have easily summoned the Remembrall with wandless magic, a simple accio would suffice. But this moment offered a different kind of opportunity. Mounting his broom despite Hermione's protests, he kicked off and soared upward, surprised by how natural it felt. Malfoy looked stunned as Harry drew level with him. "Give it here," Harry repeated, "or I'll knock you off that broom." "Oh yeah?" Malfoy sneered, but he looked worried. Harry leaned forward and shot toward Malfoy like a javelin. The blonde boy barely got out of the way in time. Below, students were gasping and cheering. "No Crab and Goyle up here to save you, Malfoy," Harry called. The same thought seemed to have occurred to Malfoy. "Catch it if you can, then," he shouted, throwing the Remembrall high into the air before streaking back toward the ground. Harry tracked the small glass ball as it rose and then began to fall. He pointed his broom handle down and gathered speed, racing the ball toward the ground. Wind whistled in his ears as the Remembrall and ground rushed toward him. He stretched out his hand, caught the Remembrall a foot from the ground, and pulled his broom straight, toppling gently onto the grass with the Remembrall clutched safely in his fist. Harry Potter. Professor McGonagall was running toward them. Harry got to his feet, calculating rapidly. Being punished would undermine his efforts to appear obedient, but the display of exceptional flying skills could open other doors. Never, in all my time at Hogwarts, Professor McGonagall was almost speechless with shock. "How dare you, might have broken your neck, it wasn't his fault, Professor." "Be quiet, Miss Patil," "But Malfoy, that's enough, Mr. Weasley." "Potter, follow me, now." Harry followed McGonagall inside the castle, maintaining a worried expression while internally reviewing his options. To his surprise, McGonagall didn't take him to her office but instead to a classroom where she collected a burly fifth-year boy named Oliver Wood. "Wood, I've found you a seeker," she said. Wood's expression changed from puzzlement to delight. "Are you serious, Professor?" "Absolutely. The boy's a natural. I've never seen anything like it." And just like that, Harry found himself named as the youngest seeker in a century, with a special exemption to the first-year broom ban. As he walked back to Gryffindor Tower alongside an ecstatic Oliver Wood, Harry suppressed a smile. This was perfect. Quidditch would give him a public platform, build his reputation, and provide legitimate cover for developing physical skills he'd need later. That evening, as the news spread through Gryffindor Tower, Harry found himself the center of attention. Fred and George Weasley, the Gryffindor beaters, clapped him on the back and declared him a hero. Older students who had never spoken to him before now sought his opinion on professional Quidditch teams. Even Percy Weasley offered congratulations. "You'll be brilliant, Harry," Ron said excitedly. "Fred and George say the Gryffindor team hasn't had a decent seeker in years." Harry accepted the praise modestly, but his eyes were scanning the common room. Power dynamics were shifting already, he could feel it. His status had been elevated from famous first year to valuable team asset, opening new channels of influence. Later, In the quiet of the dormitory, Harry wrote to Mr. Gray, unexpected development, named seeker for Gryffindor. Public profile increasing. Useful for our purposes? The response appeared an hour later. Excellent. Use this position. The hero on the Quidditch pitch becomes the hero they will follow elsewhere. Build your legend. October brought changing leaves, chilly winds, and intensified training as Harry balanced Quidditch practice with his academic facade and his true mission. Wood drove the team relentlessly through dawn practices, determined to win the Quidditch Cup. Harry excelled in his role as seeker, his reflexes and spatial awareness far beyond what was typical for his age, benefits of Mr. Gray's training. Meanwhile, Harry continued to expand his network. Neville Longbottom became a tentative ally after Harry returned his remembrall and offered to help him with potions, where Snape's bullying left the round-faced boy trembling and unable to concentrate. "I'm just no good at magic," Neville confided one evening as they worked together in the library. "My gran was afraid I might be a squib for ages." "That's nonsense," Harry said firmly. "You're plenty magical, Neville. You just lack confidence." Neville looked unconvinced. "My gran says I'm not living up to my parents' legacy." "Your parents?" Harry asked, seizing the opening. Mr. Gray had mentioned that the Longbottoms had been Aurors who suffered a terrible fate after Voldemort's fall, but the details were sketchy. Neville went pale. I don't like to talk about it." "I understand," Harry said gently. "My parents are gone too. Sometimes I wonder if I'm living up to what they would have wanted." "At least your parents are remembered as heroes," Neville said quietly. "Everyone knows what happened to them." Harry carefully steered the conversation to safer ground, noting that Neville's parents were a sensitive topic but one he'd need to revisit. The Longbottom's fate might hold important information about the aftermath of Voldemort's fall and the Ministry's response. In addition to Neville, Harry cultivated a careful acquaintance with Susan Bones, a Hufflepuff first year whose Aunt Amelia headed the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. During joint herbology classes, he made a point of partnering with her when possible, showing interest in her family without being too obvious. "My Aunt Amelia says the Ministry's been in chaos ever since you-know-who disappeared," Susan told him one day as they repotted bouncing bulbs. "Too many Death Eaters claimed they were under the Imperius curse, and no one could prove otherwise. So they just got away with it?" Harry asked, allowing his genuine outrage to show. "Some did." Susan lowered her voice. "Aunt Amelia says there are people walking free who should be in Azkaban. Powerful people with Ministry connections. Like Lucius Malfoy?" Harry suggested. Susan's eyes widened. "You shouldn't say such things. My aunt could get in trouble if people knew she talks about this stuff at home." "I won't tell anyone," Harry promised. "But don't you think it's wrong? That some people are above the law just because they have gold and connections?" Susan hesitated. "Yes," she admitted. "It's wrong." Harry smiled encouragingly. "Then maybe someday we can help change it." The conversation moved on, but Harry had gained valuable insight into the Ministry's corruption and identified a potential future contact within magical law enforcement. Susan Bones might not become part of his inner circle, but she could prove useful when the time came to dismantle the system from within. His most surprising connection came from Ravenclaw. While searching for a rare book on magical theory in the library, Harry encountered a strange blonde first-year girl reading upside down. "Hello," she said dreamily, without looking up. "You're Harry Potter. You have a fascinating aura, all swirling gold and shadow." Harry tensed, wondering if this odd girl somehow could see through his carefully constructed persona. "I'm sorry, I don't think we've met." "Luna Lovegood," she said, finally lowering her upside-down copy of the Quibbler. "You're looking for Godlot's Magic Most Ancient, but Madame Pants keeps it in the restricted section." Harry stared at her. "How did you know that?" Luna smiled vaguely. "The Raxperts told me. They float in your ears and make your brain fuzzy, but sometimes they carry interesting information." Rather than dismissing her as mad, as most students did, Harry sensed something genuine beneath her eccentric exterior. Luna Lovegood perceived the world differently, perhaps even saw truths others missed. Mr. Gray had taught him that those society labeled as odd or unbalanced often possessed unique insights. "Do you know how I might access the restricted section?" he asked quietly. "Professor Flitwick signs permission slips for Ravenclaw's doing independent research," Luna replied. "He rarely questions what we're researching. I could check out the book for you." Harry was surprised by the direct offer of help from someone he'd just met. "Why would you do that for me?" "Because the Nargles say you're going to change everything," Luna said simply. "And I think the wizarding world needs changing." 2 days later, Luna discreetly passed him Godelot's ancient tome in the corridor between classes. The book contained advanced theory on magical resonance, crucial for understanding how to dismantle complex enchantments like those protecting the Ministry. Harry couldn't help but wonder how Luna knew he needed this specific information, but he added her to his mental list of potential allies. By late October, Harry had established a careful foundation of connections spanning all 4 houses. Not all would become active participants in his plans, but each served a purpose in his growing network of information and influence. The outer circle remained unaware of his true intentions, seeing only a friendly, somewhat reserved first year with an interest in magical politics and history. Only Hermione had begun to glimpse the deeper currents of his thinking, as their late-night study sessions increasingly focused on the flaws in wizarding governance and the historical oppression of magical beings. "The more I read, the more convinced I am that the entire system needs restructuring," Hermione said one evening, her voice hushed despite the privacy charms Harry had discreetly cast around their corner of the common room. "Did you know the Wisengamot still operates on hereditary seats? Half the members inherited their positions based on family name alone. Effectively a magical House of Lords," Harry noted. "With all the same problems." "Exactly." Hermione's eyes shone with the passion of newfound political awareness. "And the minister is elected by the Wisengamot, not by general vote. The average witch or wizard has virtually no say in their government." Harry watched her connect the dots, feeling a surge of pride in his first true recruit. "And who benefits from this system?" "Pureblood families," she replied immediately. "They maintain control generation after generation, making laws that preserve their advantages. While magical beings are classified as creatures, Muggleborns face discrimination, and anyone different is regulated and registered," Harry finished. "It's no wonder Voldemort found so many followers. He offered an extreme version of what the system already promotes, pure blood supremacy." Hermione shivered slightly at Voldemort's name but nodded in agreement. "But replacing one bad system with something worse isn't the answer." "No," Harry agreed, "what we need is true reform. A complete reimagining of magical governance." He leaned forward. "What if there were no statute of secrecy? What if magical and non-magical people could live together openly? What if beings like goblins and centaurs had equal representation in government?" "It sounds wonderful," Hermione said, then frowned. "But Harry, we're just first years. How can we possibly change centuries of entrenched tradition?" Harry smiled enigmatically. "Everyone starts somewhere, Hermione. For now, we learn. We prepare. We find others who think like us." He didn't add what Mr. Gray had impressed upon him, that sometimes, systems too corrupt to reform must first be dismantled entirely. Halloween arrived with the scent of pumpkin wafting through the corridors and bats fluttering among the enchanted ceiling of the great hall. Harry felt a strange mixture of emotions that morning. It was, after all, the anniversary of his parents' deaths. Mr. Gray had emphasized the significance of the date, suggesting that magical energies would be particularly potent for Harry on this night when the veil between worlds thinned. The day's classes proceeded normally until Charms, where Professor Flitwick paired them up to practice the levitation spell, Wingardium Leviosa. Ron was paired with Hermione, while Harry worked with Seamus Finnegan. Harry deliberately performed the spell competently but not exceptionally, allowing Hermione to be the first to successfully levitate her feather. Ron, struggling with both the spell and Hermione's attempts to correct his pronunciation, grew increasingly frustrated. After class, Harry overheard Ron mimicking Hermione to Seamus, "It's Leviosa, not Leviosa. She's a nightmare, honestly. No wonder she hasn't got any friends." Hermione pushed past them, tears in her eyes. Harry frowned at Ron, who had the grace to look sheepish. "I think she heard you." "So?" Ron said, though he looked uncomfortable. "She must have noticed she's got no friends." "She's my friend," Harry said firmly. "And she was only trying to help." Ron muttered something incoherent, but Harry was already heading after Hermione. He found her ducking into the girls' bathroom, clearly not wanting to be seen crying. Respecting her privacy, he decided to give her space until their next class. But Hermione didn't appear in Transfiguration, nor was she at the Halloween feast that evening. Parvati Patil mentioned she was crying in the girls' bathroom and wanted to be left alone. Harry felt a twinge of concern, not just for Hermione's feelings, but for the vulnerability of one of his key allies being isolated and emotionally compromised. His concerns proved justified when Professor Quirrell burst into the Great Hall midway through the feast, his turban askew and terror on his face. "Troll, in the dungeons, thought you ought to know." He sank to the floor in a dead faint. As pandemonium erupted, Dumbledore ordered the prefects to lead their houses back to dormitories. Harry grabbed Ron's arm as they followed Percy out of the hall. "Hermione doesn't know about the troll," he said urgently. Ron bit his lip. "Oh, all right," he said. "But Percy'd better not see us." They slipped away from the Gryffindors and hurried toward the girls' bathroom. Turning a corner, Harry caught a foul stench, followed by the sight of a 12-foot mountain troll lumbering down the corridor, heading straight for the bathroom where Hermione was hiding. "It's going into the girls' bathroom," Harry whispered, pulling Ron behind a statue. A high, petrified scream echoed from the bathroom. "Hermione," they said together, abandoning caution and running toward the scream. The scene inside was chaos, Hermione shrinking against the wall opposite, looking as if she were about to faint as the troll advanced on her, knocking sinks off the walls as it went. "Confuse it," Harry said desperately to Ron, seizing a tap and throwing it against the wall. The troll stopped, blinking stupidly, then lumbered toward Harry instead. "Oi, pea-brain!" Ron yelled, throwing a metal pipe. The troll didn't even seem to notice the pipe hitting its shoulder, but it heard the yell and turned toward Ron instead. Harry saw his opening. In that moment, he made a split-second calculation. The situation demanded more than a first year should be capable of, but Hermione's life was at stake. He would have to reveal a fraction of his true abilities. As the troll raised its club to smash Ron, Harry pointed his wand and shouted, "Immobilus." A freezing charm taught to third years, not first years. The spell hit the troll with surprising force, momentarily halting its movement. The creature shook its head, confused but not incapacitated. Trolls were naturally resistant to magic. "Ron, get Hermione out," Harry commanded, his voice carrying an authority beyond his years. The troll, angered by Harry's spell, roared and swung its club wildly. Harry ducked and rolled with practiced ease, coming up in a defensive stance Mr. Grey had taught him. "Wingardium Leviosa." Ron shouted from near the door, his pronunciation perfect in the moment of crisis. The club flew suddenly out of the troll's hand, rose high up into the air, turned slowly over, and dropped, with a sickening crack, onto its owner's head. The troll swayed on the spot and then fell flat on its face with a thud that made the whole room tremble. Hermione was the first to speak, her voice shaky. "Is it dead?" "I don't think so," said Harry, "just knocked out." Ron stared at Harry, his wand still raised. "What was that spell you used?" "The immo whatever." "Immobulus," Harry said, thinking quickly. "I read about it in a book and tried it without really thinking. I was desperate." Ron seemed to accept this explanation, but Hermione was looking at Harry with new understanding in her eyes. She had recognized the advanced nature of the spell and the confident way he had moved during the fight, not the panicked flailing of a novice, but the calculated movements of someone with training. A sudden slamming and loud footsteps made the three of them look up. Professor McGonagall burst into the room, followed by Snape and Quirrell. Quirrell took one look at the troll, let out a faint whimper, and sat quickly down on a toilet, clutching his heart. Snape bent over the troll, while McGonagall was looking at Harry and Ron with fury in her eyes. "What on earth were you thinking?" said Professor McGonagall, cold anger in her voice. "You're lucky you weren't killed. Why aren't you in your dormitory?" Then Hermione did something that surprised Harry. "Please, Professor McGonagall, they were looking for me. Miss Granger. I went looking for the troll because I thought I could deal with it on my own, you know, because I've read all about them." Ron dropped his wand in shock. "If they hadn't found me, I'd be dead now." Harry used a freezing charm to distract it, and Ron knocked it out with its own club. They didn't have time to come and fetch anyone. It was about to finish me off when they arrived. Harry kept his face neutral, but inwardly he was impressed. Hermione was protecting them, even lying to a professor, a significant shift from her rule-abiding nature. "Well, in that case," said Professor McGonagall, "Miss Granger, you foolish girl, how could you think of tackling a mountain troll on your own?" McGonagall took 5 points from Gryffindor for Hermione's supposed actions, then awarded Harry and Ron 5 points each for sheer dumb luck. As they headed back to Gryffindor Tower, Harry noticed Hermione watching him with newfound curiosity and respect. That night, when the common room had emptied and they were alone by the fire, Hermione finally asked the question Harry had been expecting. "That wasn't a first-year spell, was it? Immobulus?" Harry met her gaze steadily. "No. And the way you moved, you've had training." "Yes." Hermione didn't ask how or why. Instead, she said something that confirmed Harry's assessment of her potential: "Teach me." Harry smiled. "I will. But Hermione, there are things I can't explain yet. Things you'll have to trust me on." She nodded slowly. "I trust you, Harry. You saved my life today." "We saved each other," he corrected her. "And will continue to do so." The troll incident had accelerated his timeline. Hermione was now firmly in his inner circle, and Ron had proven himself braver and more capable than Harry had initially assessed. The foundations of power were being laid, one relationship at a time. November brought bitter cold and the start of the Quidditch season. On the morning of Harry's first match against Slytherin, he received an unexpected package at breakfast, a Nimbus 2000 broomstick, the finest racing broom available. A small note read simply, "Good luck today. Professor McGonagall." Harry knew this was likely Dumbledore's indirect support. The headmaster rarely intervened directly but operated through others, a political strategy Harry was beginning to appreciate, even as he remained wary of the powerful wizard who had left him with the Dursleys. The Quidditch match provided Harry with exactly the public platform Mr. Grey had suggested he use. With hundreds of students, teachers, and even some ministry visitors watching from the stands, Harry demonstrated extraordinary flying skills, dodging bludgers and outmaneuvering older Slytherin players. When his broom began jerking violently midway through the match, Harry recognized the signs of external magical interference. Maintaining his grip while appearing to struggle more than he actually was, he scanned the teacher's stand. Snape was staring at him unblinkingly, muttering continuously, but so was Quirrell, sitting just behind him. Harry caught Hermione's eye in the stands and subtly directed her attention toward the teachers. She understood immediately, disappearing from view. Moments later, Snape's robes caught fire, breaking his concentration, but also Quirrell's. The broom stopped jerking, and Harry regained control. Spotting the snitch, Harry went into a spectacular dive, racing neck and neck with the Slytherin seeker, Terence Higgs. At the last moment, Harry pulled ahead, nearly crashing into the ground before pulling up with the snitch clutched triumphantly in his hand. Gryffindor erupted in cheers, and Harry found himself lifted onto the shoulders of his teammates. As they paraded him around the pitch, he caught sight of Dumbledore watching with twinkling eyes. The headmaster raised his goblet in a subtle toast, and Harry nodded respectfully in return, even as he made mental note of the wizard's apparent approval. Being underestimated by Dumbledore was crucial to his plans. After the celebration in Gryffindor Tower finally died down, Harry met Hermione and Ron in a quiet corner. "It was Snape," Ron whispered excitedly. "Hermione and I saw him. He was cursing your broomstick, muttering, he wouldn't take his eyes off you. I set fire to his robes to break his concentration," Hermione admitted, looking both proud and horrified at her own daring. Harry frowned thoughtfully. "But why would Snape try to kill me?" "I don't know," Hermione said, "but I've heard he's been trying to get past that three-headed dog on the third floor. He was limping after Halloween. I think he let the troll in as a diversion so he could try to steal whatever it's guarding." Harry raised an eyebrow. "Three-headed dog?" Ron and Hermione exchanged glances before explaining their accidental discovery of a massive three-headed dog guarding a trapdoor in the forbidden corridor on the third floor. Harry listened with growing interest. This was new information that even Mr. Gray hadn't mentioned. Whatever it's guarding must be incredibly valuable, Harry mused. Or dangerous. Or both, Hermione added. Harry made a mental note to investigate further. If something of great magical significance was hidden at Hogwarts, it could potentially be useful to their cause. However, he was less convinced than his friends about Snape's involvement. The potions master clearly despised him, but attempted murder seemed extreme, especially with Dumbledore watching. And Harry hadn't missed Quirrell's simultaneous muttering during the match. There was more to this situation than met the eye. As November yielded to December and snow blanketed the grounds, Harry continued his three parallel lives: ordinary student, Quidditch star, and revolutionary in training. In private moments with Hermione, he shared selective wandless magic techniques and mental focusing exercises while gradually introducing more radical political ideas. The separation between magical and muggle worlds is arbitrary, he explained one evening as they practiced silent casting in an abandoned classroom. There was a time when we lived together openly. The statute of secrecy is relatively recent in magical history. But weren't there witch hunts? Hermione asked. Professor Binns mentioned the persecution. Largely ineffective, Harry countered. Real witches and wizards could easily escape muggle attempts to harm them. The statute wasn't about protection, it was about control. About creating a separate society where certain families could maintain power. Hermione's brow furrowed as she considered this perspective. But revealing magic now would cause chaos. The muggle world isn't ready. Perhaps, Harry conceded. But who decides when they're ready? The same ministry that classifies sentient beings as creatures. The same Wisengamot dominated by families who benefit from secrecy. He could see her wrestling with these ideas, her keen mind exploring implications and possibilities. This was why he'd chosen Hermione as his first true recruit, not just for her magical talent, which was considerable, but for her intellectual capacity to challenge and refine his vision. Meanwhile, his relationship with Draco Malfoy took an unexpected turn. After Gryffindor's Quidditch victory, Malfoy had been even more unpleasant than usual, mocking Harry at every opportunity. The tensions culminated one day in the library, where Malfoy cornered Harry alone among the shelves of the restricted section. Harry had accessed the area using a permission slip from Professor Flitwick, obtained under the pretense of advanced charms research. Spying for another way to cheat at Quidditch, Potter? Malfoy sneered, blocking Harry's path between the towering bookshelves. Harry calmly closed the ancient tome he'd been consulting on blood wards. Hello, Malfoy. I didn't realize you frequented the library. I saw you slip in here and thought I'd see what the famous Harry Potter is up to. Malfoy's eyes narrowed as he glanced at the book in Harry's hands. Blood magic. Rather dark for Dumbledore's golden boy. I'm researching magical protections, Harry replied truthfully, though not completely. He'd been investigating the blood wards Dumbledore had presumably placed around the Dursleys' home, trying to understand how they functioned, and how similar principles might be applied to other locations. Malfoy leaned closer, dropping his voice. "You're not what you seem, are you, Potter? I've been watching you. The way you hold back in class, the books you read when you think no one's looking." Harry met Malfoy's gaze steadily. This was an interesting development. The Slytherin was more observant than he'd given him credit for. "We all have our masks, Malfoy," Harry said quietly. "I wonder what's behind yours." Malfoy blinked, clearly not expecting this response. "What's that supposed to mean?" "You play the arrogant pureblood heir perfectly. But I sometimes wonder if you actually believe everything your father taught you, or if you're just following the script." Anger flashed across Malfoy's pale face. "You know nothing about me or my family, Potter." "I know your father served Voldemort," Harry said, deliberately using the name that made most wizards flinch. Malfoy, to his credit, merely paled slightly. "I know he claimed to be under the Imperius curse. I know he still wields considerable influence at the Ministry through generous donations." "Careful, Potter," Malfoy warned, his hand moving toward his wand. Harry remained relaxed, though his senses were alert to Malfoy's every movement. "I'm not judging, Draco. I'm merely observing that we all make choices based on the information and options available to us." He paused, then added, "Sometimes, new information changes everything." Malfoy stared at him, confusion warring with hostility in his eyes. "What game are you playing?" "No game," Harry said. "Just a suggestion that things in the wizarding world are not as simple as they might appear. Light and dark, good and evil, these are labels that obscure more complex truths." For a moment, Harry thought he'd miscalculated. Malfoy's expression remained cold and suspicious. Then, surprisingly, the Slytherin gave a short, humorless laugh. "You're definitely not what everyone thinks you are, Potter." He stepped back. "This conversation never happened." "Agreed," Harry said with a nod. As Malfoy turned to leave, Harry called after him softly, "By the way, you might find Arcturus Black's essays on magical autonomy interesting. Third shelf from the right in the political theory section." Malfoy paused, then continued walking without acknowledging the suggestion. But 2 days later, Harry spotted him in the library, a familiar volume open before him, Arcturus Black's collected writings on wizarding governance and the limitations of ministry authority. The hook had been set. Harry had no illusions about fully converting Draco Malfoy to his cause. The Slytherin was too deeply embedded in pureblood society, too closely tied to his father's legacy. But creating doubt, introducing alternative perspectives, these were valuable in their own right. And having eyes and ears in Slytherin House would prove useful in the months to come. As Christmas approached, Harry learned that Ron and his brothers would be staying at Hogwarts for the holidays, as their parents were visiting Charlie in Romania. Hermione was returning home to her parents, reluctantly promising to limit her discussion of magical politics during the family holiday. "I'll miss our sessions," she admitted as they walked around the snow-covered grounds on the last day of term. "My parents won't understand any of this." "Use the time to observe the Muggle world with new eyes," Harry suggested. "Notice the systems of governance, the distribution of power. There are parallels we can learn from." Hermione looked at him curiously. "You've changed how I see everything, Harry. Sometimes I wonder how you came to think this way. You grew up with Muggles who hated magic, yet you have this vision of a different world." Harry chose his words carefully. "Let's just say I had guidance at a critical time. Someone who helped me see beyond the obvious." "Hagrid?" she asked. "Someone else," Harry said with a mysterious smile. "Someone I'll tell you about when the time is right." The castle emptied for the holidays, leaving a peaceful quiet that Harry used to advance his research and training. With fewer eyes watching, he could practice more advanced magic in secluded areas of the castle. The Room of Requirement, which Mr. Gray had described in detail, proved particularly useful, a secret space that transformed itself according to the user's needs. On Christmas morning, Harry awoke to a small pile of presents at the foot of his bed. From Hagrid, a roughly carved wooden flute. From Mrs. Weasley, a hand-knitted emerald green sweater and homemade fudge. From Hermione, a box of chocolate frogs with a note mentioning an additional gift she would give him privately when she returned. Ron had given him a book on chess strategies, while the Dursleys had sent a 50-pence piece. The most intriguing gift came with no card, just a note reading, "Your father left this in my possession before he died. It is time it was returned to you. Use it well." Inside the package was a fluid, silvery grey cloak that, when Harry tried it on, rendered him completely invisible. An invisibility cloak. Ron gasped when he saw Harry's head floating in midair. "They're really rare and valuable." Harry examined the cloak with wonder. Mr. Grey had never mentioned this, an heirloom from his father that had somehow ended up in another's possession. The note's handwriting was looping and unfamiliar, but Harry strongly suspected Dumbledore was the sender. Why return it now? What did the headmaster expect him to do with it? That night, Harry decided to test the cloak's effectiveness. Wrapping it around himself, he slipped out of Gryffindor Tower and began exploring parts of the castle normally off-limits to students. He avoided Filch and Mrs. Norris with ease, relishing the freedom the cloak provided. His wanderings eventually led him to an unused classroom where an ornate mirror stood against the wall, almost reaching the ceiling. The inscription carved around the top read, "Erist stra eru oit ube kafru oit anwosi." Curious, Harry stepped in front of the mirror, and nearly cried out in shock. He was not alone in the reflection. Behind him stood dozens of people, some with his untidy black hair, others with his green eyes. His family, the Potters he had never known. But as he watched, the image shifted. The family members faded, replaced by a different scene entirely. Harry saw himself, older, standing atop the ruins of what looked like the Ministry of Magic. Beside him stood Hermione and several others whose faces were blurred. Around them, magical beings of all kinds, goblins, centaurs, house elves, gathered as equals. Above them all, barely visible like a ghost or memory, floated the approving figure of Mr. Grey, his blue eyes twinkling with pride. Harry stared, transfixed. The mirror of Erist, he realized, showed not just one's family or simple desires, but one's deepest, most desperate desire. And his, apparently, was the successful completion of the revolution Mr. Grey was guiding him toward, a new world where magical hierarchies had been dismantled. He returned to the mirror the following night, and the night after that. On the third night, he was not alone. "Back again, Harry." Albus Dumbledore was sitting on one of the desks by the wall. Harry wondered how long the headmaster had been there, and whether the invisibility cloak had been a deliberate temptation to lead him to this mirror. "I didn't see you, sir." "Strange how nearsighted being invisible can make you," said Dumbledore, smiling. "So, you, like hundreds before you, have discovered the delights of the Mirror of Erist." "I didn't know it was called that, sir. But I expect you've realized by now what it does. It shows us what we want, whatever we want." "Yes and no," said Dumbledore quietly. "It shows us nothing more or less than the deepest, most desperate desire of our hearts. You, who have never known your family, see them standing around you. However, this mirror will give us neither knowledge nor truth. Men have wasted away before it, entranced by what they have seen, or been driven mad, not knowing if what it shows is real or even possible." Harry nodded, relieved that Dumbledore had assumed he saw only his family. The headmaster hadn't glimpsed the revolutionary vision that had replaced it. "The mirror will be moved to a new home tomorrow, Harry, and I ask you not to go looking for it again. If you ever do run across it, you will now be prepared. It does not do to dwell on dreams and forget to live, remember that." As Harry turned to leave, Dumbledore added, "By the way, your father used that cloak mainly for sneaking off to the kitchens to steal food when he was here." Harry smiled, playing the role of a son eager for connections to his father. "Thank you for returning it to me, sir." Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. "Use it well, Harry. Use it well." Walking back to Gryffindor Tower, Harry considered the encounter. The headmaster was testing him, observing his reactions, perhaps even guiding him in some subtle way. The gift of the cloak, the discovery of the mirror, these seemed too convenient to be coincidence. He would need to be even more careful in Dumbledore's presence. The ancient wizard was playing a game whose rules Harry didn't fully understand, and that made him dangerous indeed. The final days of the Christmas holiday brought Harry's most significant encounter yet. Mr. Grey had instructed him to come alone to the edge of the Forbidden Forest at midnight on the winter solstice, a time of magical significance when ancient powers reached their peak. Using his invisibility cloak, Harry slipped out of the castle and made his way across the snow-covered grounds. The night was clear and cold, stars glittering like diamonds against the black sky. The forest loomed ahead, dark and foreboding. At the agreed-upon spot, Harry removed his cloak and waited. Minutes passed in silence broken only by the distant hooting of owls. Then, a soft crunch of snow announced another presence. "You've grown, Harry Potter." The voice was familiar, yet somehow different, stronger, less disguised than in their previous meetings. From the shadows emerged not the elderly Mr. Grey, but a tall, straight-backed wizard with piercing blue eyes that seemed to glow in the darkness. Though still elderly, he carried himself with the confidence and power of a much younger man. His white blonde hair gleamed in the moonlight. "Mr. Grey?" Harry asked, though he already sensed the truth. "That name has served its purpose," the wizard said with a slight smile. "It is time you knew me by my true identity." He gave a formal, old-fashioned bow. "Gellert Grindelwald, at your service." Despite his preparation, Harry felt a shock ripple through him. Grindelwald, the dark wizard defeated by Dumbledore in 1945, supposedly imprisoned in Ermengarde for life. The revolutionary whose vision of wizarding dominance had nearly succeeded. "How?" Harry managed to ask. "You're supposed to be in prison." Grindelwald chuckled. "A combination of ancient magic, careful planning, and the arrogance of my captors. What appears to languish in Ermengarde is merely a shadow, a magical construct that maintains the appearance of an old, defeated wizard." His eyes gleamed. "I have never been defeated, merely, delayed." Harry processed this revelation, connecting it to everything Mr. Grey, no, Grindelwald, had taught him over the years. "You've been training me since I was 7. Why me?" "Because you are unique, Harry Potter." When Voldemort's killing curse rebounded, it did more than leave a scar. It awakened potential in you that might have otherwise remained dormant for decades. Grindelwald stepped closer. "I recognized that potential immediately. While others saw a symbol, a baby hero, I saw a vessel for revolutionary change." "And what is your true vision?" Harry asked carefully. "You've taught me to question the ministry, to recognize the oppression of magical beings, but you've never fully explained your own goals." "My vision has evolved over the decades," Grindelwald admitted. "In my youth, I believed in wizard dominance over muggles, for their own good, of course. The greater good, as I called it then." A shadow passed over his face. But isolation and time for reflection revealed the flaw in that thinking. It wasn't dominance we needed, but liberation, freedom from the artificial constraints of secrecy and the corrupt institutions that maintain it. He began pacing, his voice gaining intensity. "The ministry, the statute of secrecy, the classification of magical beings, these are not natural laws but constructs designed to maintain power for the few at the expense of the many. They must be dismantled, Harry. Not to subjugate muggles, but to allow magic itself to flow freely again throughout the world." Harry studied the dark wizard's face, searching for deception but finding only passionate conviction. "And how do I fit into this vision?" "You will be the catalyst," Grindelwald said simply. "The boy who lived, leading a revolution that will forever transform our world." He smiled. "But not alone. You've already begun gathering allies, I see. The Granger girl shows particular promise." "Hermione," Harry nodded. "She's brilliant." Seize the flaws in the system immediately. Nurture that alliance, Grindelwald advised. She will be crucial in the days to come. He reached into his robes and withdrew a small, leather-bound book. This contains the next phase of your training, more advanced magic and specific information about the ministry's structure and vulnerabilities. Harry accepted the book, feeling its magic resonate with his own. What about Dumbledore? He watches me. Albus sees what he expects to see, Grindelwald said, a complex emotion flickering across his face. He expects the traumatized orphan seeking connection, the brave Gryffindor following his father's path. Give him that image while preparing for something entirely different. And Voldemort? Harry asked. He's not truly gone. I can feel it sometimes. Grindelwald's expression darkened. No, he is not gone. He exists in a half-life, seeking a way to return. He will be an obstacle to our plans. He desires domination, not liberation. When the time comes, you will need to confront him. They spoke for another hour, Grindelwald outlining the next steps in Harry's development and the timeline for the coming revolution. The plan was audacious, to infiltrate the ministry from within, identify its magical vulnerabilities, and dismantle it completely by the end of Harry's first year at Hogwarts. The winter solstice next year will be our moment, Grindelwald explained. When the old year dies and the new begins, so too will a new era in wizarding history commence. As dawn approached, Grindelwald prepared to leave. One last thing, Harry. There is something hidden at Hogwarts, something of immense magical significance. The object guarded by the three-headed dog, Harry said. Grindelwald raised an eyebrow. You've discovered it already? Excellent. It is the Philosopher's Stone, created by Nicholas Flamel. It can transform any metal into pure gold and produces the elixir of life, which grants immortality. And you want me to steal it? Harry guessed. Secure it, Grindelwald corrected. The stone represents exactly the kind of powerful magic the ministry seeks to control and suppress. In our hands, it becomes a symbol of magical liberation, proof that extraordinary magic need not be hidden away but shared for the benefit of all. With that, Grindelwald disappeared into the shadows of the forest. Harry stood alone in the snow, the leather-bound book clutched in his hands, his mind racing with new information and possibilities. The pieces were falling into place. The ministry's days were numbered, and Harry Potter, the boy who lived, the secret apprentice, would be the instrument of its destruction. When the other students returned after Christmas, Harry noticed a subtle shift in the castle's atmosphere. Professors seemed more vigilant, prefects patrolled the corridors more frequently, and Dumbledore appeared at meals he would normally have skipped. Something had changed during the holiday, some threat had been detected or anticipated. Hermione returned bursting with new insights from her time in the Muggle world. I did what you suggested, she told Harry excitedly as they met in the room of requirement for their first private session of the new term. I looked at Muggle political systems with fresh eyes. The parallels are fascinating, Harry. Both worlds struggle with questions of representation, justice, and the balance between security and freedom. And both have their revolutionaries, Harry noted, those who recognize when systems become too corrupt to reform. Hermione hesitated. That's where I'm still uncertain. Revolution implies destruction before rebuilding. Are we really at that point? Instead of arguing, Harry opened his new leather-bound book to a carefully marked page. Read this, he said. It's a transcript of a closed Wisengamot session from 1982, just after Voldemort's fall. Hermione bent over the page, her eyes widening as she read. The transcript detailed how the ministry had systematically covered up certain Death Eater identities, accepted bribes for reduced sentences, and deliberately suppressed evidence that might have implicated prominent families. This can't be real, she whispered. It is, Harry assured her. The same corruption continues today. The system doesn't just contain flaws, Hermione, it is fundamentally built on inequality, secrecy, and oppression. Where did you get this information? She asked, her voice shaking slightly. Harry met her eyes. From my mentor. The person who has been guiding me since before Hogwarts. Who is he? I can't tell you yet, Harry said honestly. But I will, when you're ready to hear it. When you've decided for yourself that the current system cannot stand. Hermione fell silent, clearly wrestling with the implications. Finally, she squared her shoulders. Teach me more. Everything you can. I need to understand before I can decide. Over the following weeks, Harry intensified Hermione's training, teaching her wandless magic, occlumency to protect her mind from intrusion, and advanced defensive spells. She proved an extraordinarily quick study, her natural intelligence amplified by determination and growing moral conviction. Meanwhile, Harry continued his investigation of the Philosopher's Stone. With his invisibility cloak, he was able to explore the Forbidden Corridor more thoroughly, studying the enchantments protecting the stone. The three-headed dog, Fluffy, Hagrid had accidentally revealed, was only the first obstacle. Through careful observation and strategic eavesdropping, Harry learned of additional protections contributed by different professors: Sprout's Devil's Snare, Flitwick's Enchanted Keys, McGonagall's Giant Chess Set, Quirrell's Troll, Snape's Logical Puzzle, and finally, Dumbledore's own contribution, something unknown but undoubtedly formidable. The stone's presence at Hogwarts raised important questions. Why move it from Gringotts now? Who was trying to steal it? Hermione and Ron remained convinced that Snape was the culprit, but Harry was less certain. He had noticed Quirrell's increasingly nervous behavior, the strange odor that emanated from his turban, and the fact that Harry's scar sometimes prickled painfully in the defense professor's presence. As January turned to February, Harry expanded his network further. Luna Lovegood continued to provide valuable books from the restricted section, while Neville Longbottom, gaining confidence through Harry's guidance, became a loyal supporter. Susan Bones shared more insights from her aunt about ministry operations, and even Draco Malfoy had begun a cautious, almost imperceptible shift toward questioning certain pure-blood dogmas. The most surprising addition came from an unexpected quarter. Fred and George Weasley, notorious pranksters and Ron's older twin brothers, approached Harry one evening after Quidditch practice. "We've been watching you, Potter," said Fred, or possibly George. "Very interesting movements for a first year," added the other twin. Especially after hours, they finished together. Harry tensed, wondering if they had somehow tracked him despite his invisibility cloak. "I don't know what you mean." George, or possibly Fred, grinned. "No need to play innocent with us. We have our ways of knowing." He tapped a folded piece of parchment in his pocket. "Let's just say we're impressed with your extracurricular activities. And we're wondering if there might be room for a couple of creative thinkers in whatever you're planning," his twin added. Harry studied them carefully. The Weasley twins were known for their mischief, but beneath the jokes lay genuine magical talent and a disregard for restrictive rules. They could be valuable allies, or dangerous liabilities. "What makes you think I'm planning anything?" he asked neutrally. "The books you're reading," said Fred. "The people you're gathering," said George. "The questions you're asking about the ministry," they said together. Harry made his decision. "Meet me in the abandoned classroom on the 5th floor tonight at midnight. Come alone, and tell no one." The twins exchanged delighted glances. Wouldn't miss it for all the gold in Gringotts. That night, Harry introduced Fred and George to a carefully edited version of his plans, a movement to reform magical education and eventually governance, beginning with student activism at Hogwarts. He didn't mention Grindelwald or the full extent of the revolution he envisioned, but he shared enough to ignite their interest. "We're in," they declared without hesitation. "The ministry's had it coming for years. Our dad works there," Fred explained, "and he's brilliant but constantly passed over for promotion because he doesn't play political games or take bribes. Plus, they've got ridiculous regulations on everything," George added. "Did you know we can't even develop our own magical products without 17 different permits?" Harry smiled. "Then welcome to the movement. Your first assignment is to create secure communication methods for our core group. Something the Ministry can't trace or intercept. The twins exchanged mischievous grins. We've been working on something that might fit the bill. Give us 2 weeks. With the addition of the Weasley twins, Harry's inner circle was nearly complete. Hermione provided intellectual rigor and moral purpose, Ron offered loyalty and strategic thinking in the form of his chess mastery, Neville brought pure magical power that was only beginning to manifest, Luna contributed unique insights and access to restricted knowledge, and now the twins would provide innovation and practical implementation. Each had been carefully selected for their complementary abilities, personalities, and positions within Hogwarts' social structure. Together, they formed the nucleus of what would eventually become a revolutionary force. March arrived with howling winds and increasing academic pressure as professors began preparing first years for end-of-year exams. Harry maintained his facade of dedicated but not exceptional schoolwork, saving his true efforts for his private studies and the preparation of his allies. In the room of requirement, now fitted out as a training space with Grindelwald's guidance, Harry led his core group through increasingly advanced magic. Hermione had mastered basic wandless spells and was working on silent casting. Ron, initially the most skeptical of magical theory, discovered a talent for tactical applications of spellwork. Neville, once thought nearly a squib, revealed extraordinary magical reserves once his confidence grew. The key is intent, Harry explained during one session, deliberately echoing Grindelwald's earliest lessons. Magic responds to your will, your desire, not just your words or wand movements. Those are training wheels, useful but ultimately limiting. That's not what the professors teach, Ron pointed out. Because it's harder to test and quantify, Hermione reasoned. Standardized education requires standardized methods. Exactly, Harry nodded. The Ministry promotes a rigid, restrictive approach to magic because it's easier to control. Is that why they're so afraid of creatures like werewolves? Neville asked hesitantly. Because their magic doesn't follow standard rules. Harry smiled approvingly. That's insightful, Neville. Beings with innate magic that operates outside Ministry-approved channels represent a challenge to their control. Hence the registries, restrictions, and classifications. Luna, who had been gazing dreamily at the ceiling, suddenly spoke. The Rotfong conspiracy aims to bring down the Ministry through a combination of dark magic and gum disease. The others looked at her in confusion, but Harry had learned to find the kernels of truth in Luna's odd statements. The Ministry is indeed rotting from within, he agreed. Corruption and prejudice are like a disease spreading through its foundations. Luna beamed at him. That's what I said. As the group dispersed, Harry held Hermione back. I need your help with something specific, he said once they were alone. Research on the Philosopher's Stone. Hermione's eyes widened. You think that's what Fluffy is guarding? I know it is, Harry said. What I need to understand is its full capabilities and limitations. Beyond the obvious, transmutation of metals and the elixir of life, what can it do? Why is it so valuable? Harry, Hermione said slowly, are you thinking of trying to steal it? Not steal, Harry corrected. Secure. There's a difference. But why? Because it represents exactly what's wrong with our world, Hermione. A magical object of immense power, hidden away, accessible only to those deemed worthy by the current power structure. He paced the room. Think about it, the elixir of life could revolutionize magical medicine. The transmutation process could end scarcity. Yet it's locked away, its secrets known to only a handful of wizards. Hermione bit her lip. I see your point. But taking it would be an act of liberation, Harry finished. And a powerful symbol of what magic could be if freed from artificial constraints. After a moment's consideration, Hermione nodded. I'll research everything I can find. But Harry, we need to be careful. This isn't just breaking school rules. This would be revolutionary, Harry said softly. I know. As Hermione left, Harry felt a momentary pang of conscience for not telling her the whole truth. She still didn't know about Grindelwald, about the full extent of the planned ministry takeover. But she wasn't ready yet, none of them were. That revelation would come later, when they were too committed to turn back. April brought warming weather, blooming flowers, and increasing tension as Harry sensed movement in the game surrounding the Philosopher's Stone. Quirrell appeared increasingly gaunt and nervous, while Snape watched the defense professor with open suspicion. Dumbledore was often absent from meals, presumably attending to business outside the castle. During a late-night exploration under his invisibility cloak, Harry overheard a disturbing conversation between Quirrell and an unidentified second voice in an empty classroom. Master, I cannot," Quirrell whimpered. "The protections are too strong, and Dumbledore suspects, you are weak," the second voice hissed, seeming to emanate from Quirrell himself. "The stone must be secured before the solstice. The boy grows stronger each day." Harry froze. The boy? Were they referring to him? "Potter knows nothing," Quirrell protested. "He is merely a child." "He is more," the voice snarled. "Much more. I sense it. Grindelwald's influence taints him." Harry's blood ran cold. Whoever, or whatever, was speaking new about his connection to Grindelwald. This changed everything. "What would you have me do, Master?" Quirrell asked. "We move tonight. The Centaur's warning confirms our timeline is compromised." Harry retreated silently, mind racing. The voice had mentioned a Centaur's warning, something that must have happened in the Forbidden Forest. And it knew about Grindelwald. Most disturbingly, it had called Quirrell servant and was somehow speaking through him. The pieces suddenly fell into place. Quirrell's nervous behavior, the turban, the strange odor, the pain in Harry's scar, Voldemort. Somehow, the disembodied Dark Lord was possessing or controlling Quirrell, using him to seek the Philosopher's Stone. Harry needed to act quickly. If Voldemort obtained the stone, he could return to full power, becoming an immediate threat to Harry's own revolutionary plans. Grindelwald had warned that Voldemort would be an obstacle, seeking domination rather than liberation. Returning to Gryffindor Tower, Harry wrote urgently in his communication journal, "V alive, possessing Q, moving tonight for the stone. Must secure it first." Grindelwald's response came swiftly, "Time to accelerate our timeline. The stone must not fall into his hands. You are prepared for this, Harry." The next morning, Harry gathered his inner circle in the room of requirement before breakfast. He explained the situation, omitting Grindelwald's involvement but emphasizing the danger of the stone falling into Voldemort's hands. "We need to get past the protections and secure the stone tonight," he concluded. "Each of you has skills we'll need to succeed." "But Harry, we're talking about facing you-know-who," Ron said, his freckles standing out against his suddenly pale face. "Not directly," Harry assured him. "We'll retrieve the stone before he can. If we're lucky, we won't encounter him at all." "And if we're unlucky?" Hermione asked quietly. Harry met her gaze. "Then we face him together. But remember, he's weak now, dependent on Quirrell. We're 5 skilled wizards working as one." "6, Luna corrected dreamily. "The Nargles will help too." Despite the tension, they smiled. Luna's certainty was oddly reassuring. "Here's the plan," Harry continued. "We know about most of the protections from our research. Fluffy can be put to sleep with music, Hagrid let that slip. The Devil's Snare fears light and warmth. The Flying Keys will require a seeker's talents." He nodded to himself. "The chess set will need strategic thinking." Here he looked at Ron. "Then there's another troll, and Snape's logic puzzle with potions. Finally, whatever Dumbledore added. We need to move tonight," Hermione said decisively. "But how do we get past Fluffy without being caught? The corridor is sure to be watched." Fred and George exchanged glances. "Leave that to us," they said together. "We've been working on a little distraction." Nothing dangerous, Fred clarified, seeing Hermione's expression. Just something to keep the professors busy on the other side of the castle. Meanwhile, George added, we have these. He produced several small objects that looked like ordinary chocolate frogs. Our latest invention, decoys. They'll create the appearance of students in one location while we're actually elsewhere. Visual only, but enough to confuse monitoring charms. Harry nodded approvingly. Perfect. We move at midnight. Until then, act completely normal. Don't give anyone reason to suspect we're planning anything. As they dispersed, Hermione lingered. Harry, she said hesitantly, this feels bigger than just keeping the stone from you-know-who. There's something you're not telling us, isn't there? Harry hesitated. Hermione deserved the truth, or at least more of it than he'd shared so far. The stone is just the beginning, he admitted. What we do tonight sets something in motion that can't be stopped, a fundamental change in the wizarding world. The revolution you've been hinting at, she said softly. It's real, isn't it? And imminent. Yes, Harry said simply. But I can't explain everything yet. After tonight, when we have the stone, I'll tell you more. I promise. Hermione studied him for a long moment. I trust you, Harry, she finally said. But revolutions have costs. I hope you've considered them all. As she left, Harry wondered if he truly had considered all the costs. Lives would change tonight, perhaps even be lost. The wizarding world would begin an irreversible transformation. And Harry Potter, once celebrated as the boy who lived, would become something else entirely, the architect of the Ministry's destruction. He touched the lightning scar on his forehead, feeling it pulse with a strange energy. Two dark wizards sought to shape his destiny, Voldemort, who had marked him as an infant, and Grindelwald, who had claimed him as an apprentice. Tonight would determine which path he truly followed. Or perhaps, Harry thought with grim determination, he would forge a third path entirely, one that neither wizard had anticipated. The remainder of the day passed with excruciating slowness. Harry attended classes with forced normalcy, answered questions when called upon, and even participated in a brief Quidditch practice that Oliver would insisted couldn't be skipped. At dinner in the Great Hall, Harry carefully observed the staff table. Quirrell was absent, a worrying sign. Snape looked unusually tense, his dark eyes repeatedly scanning the students. Most concerning, Dumbledore was also missing, confirming Harry's fear that the headmaster was away from the school. As darkness fell, Harry and his inner circle made final preparations in the Gryffindor common room, speaking in code about their exam study session, planned for later. At precisely 11:30 p.m., Fred and George activated their distraction, a spectacular series of enchanted fireworks near the astronomy tower that would draw staff attention without causing actual damage. Under cover of Harry's invisibility cloak, extended through one of Luna's unusual but effective charms, the group made their way to the forbidden corridor on the third floor. They encountered no one, the twins' distraction was working perfectly. Outside the door guarding Fluffy, Harry turned to his companions. Last chance to turn back, he said quietly. Once we go through, there's no returning until we have the stone. We're with you, Harry, Ron said firmly, and the others nodded in agreement. Alohomora, Hermione whispered, pointing her wand at the lock. The door creaked open, revealing the enormous three-headed dog. All six of its ears perked up at the sound, even though it had been dozing. Before the beast could fully awaken, Harry pulled out the wooden flute Hagrid had given him for Christmas and began to play. The crude instrument produced an awkward melody, but it was enough. Fluffy's eyes began to droop, and soon all three heads were snoring. Keep playing, Hermione whispered as she and the others moved toward the trapdoor visible between the dog's massive paws. Ron and Neville dragged the heavy door open, revealing a dark drop below. Harry continued playing as one by one, his friends jumped into the darkness. Luna went first, followed by Neville, Ron, and then Hermione. When only Fred and George remained, Harry nodded to them, indicating they should go next. We'll stay up here, Fred whispered. Keep watch and maintain the distraction. Someone needs to make sure you can all get out again, George added. Harry wanted to argue but couldn't stop playing the flute. With a grateful nod, he handed the instrument to George, who immediately took over the tune. Harry took a deep breath and jumped into the darkness. He landed on something soft, Devil's Snare, as expected. Hermione had already cast a brilliant light from her wand, causing the plant to recoil and release them through to a stone passage below. This way, Harry whispered, leading them down the damp corridor. The sound of rustling wings grew louder as they approached a brightly lit chamber filled with flying keys. A heavy wooden door stood on the opposite side. I'll handle this one, Harry said, mounting the broomstick provided. With his seeker skills, he quickly identified the correct key, large, old-fashioned, with a bent wing from being caught before. After a brief but intense aerial chase, Harry snatched it from the air and landed smoothly. The key unlocked the door, leading them into a massive chamber containing McGonagall's giant wizard's chess set. Here, Ron took charge. We need to play our way across, he said, studying the board. Harry, take the King's Bishop Square. Hermione, Queen's Side Castle. Neville, you're a knight. Luna, Queen's Pawn. Under Ron's brilliant direction, they navigated the violent game. Pieces smashed each other brutally, until finally Ron made a difficult sacrifice, moving himself into position to be taken. Ron, no. Hermione cried. It's the only way, he said grimly. Once I move, Harry will be free to checkmate the king. Then go on, get the stone. His sacrifice worked. The White Queen struck Ron hard across the head, dragging him off the board. Harry moved 3 spaces to the left, putting the king in checkmate. As the White King's crown fell, the remaining friends rushed to Ron's side. He's just knocked out, Hermione confirmed, checking his pulse. But he shouldn't be moved. I'll stay with him, Neville volunteered. You 3 go on. Harry nodded gratefully. If we're not back in an hour, get Ron out of here and find help. The next chamber contained a troll even larger than the one they'd faced at Halloween, but fortunately already unconscious, a bloody lump on its head. Quirrell's been through here, Harry murmured. They hurried into the next chamber, where purple flames sprang up behind them and black flames blocked the path ahead. A table with 7 differently shaped bottles stood between them, alongside a parchment with Snape's logic puzzle. Hermione solved it quickly. The smallest bottle will get one person through the black flames, toward the stone. And the rounded bottle at the end will take someone back through the purple flames, Luna added, her dreamy voice suddenly precise. Harry looked at the smallest bottle. There's only enough for one person. It has to be you, Harry, Hermione said firmly. You're the strongest of us. I'll go back with Ron and Neville, Luna offered. The Raxperts say you 2 should stay together. Harry and Hermione exchanged glances. Are you sure? He asked. Luna nodded serenely. Some paths must be walked by 2, not 1. The balance requires it. After Luna had taken the rounded bottle and disappeared back through the purple flames, Hermione turned to Harry. Whatever's through there, we face it together. Harry handed her the small bottle. You drink first, just a tiny sip. There should be enough for both of us. Hermione took a small swallow, shuddered as though ice had flooded her body, and then stepped through the black flames unharmed. Harry finished the potion and followed. They found themselves in a circular chamber dominated by a familiar object, the Mirror of Eriste. And standing before it, his back to them, was Professor Quirrell. I wondered if I'd be seeing you, Potter, he said, turning to face them. His voice was different, no longer stammering but cold and precise. And Miss Granger too. How predictable. Professor, Hermione gasped. He's not alone, Harry warned, his hand instinctively moving to his wand. Voldemort is with him. Quirrell's face twisted in a cruel smile. Clever boy. My master said you might know more than you should. He began unwrapping his purple turban, revealing the most terrible sight either of them had ever witnessed, a face protruding from the back of Quirrell's head, chalk-white with glaring red eyes and slits for nostrils. "Harry Potter," the face whispered, its voice sending chills through the chamber. "See what I have become. Mere shadow and vapor, forced to share another's body. But once I have the elixir of life, I can create a body of my own." Hermione had gone rigid beside Harry, but her wand remained steady, pointed at Quirrell. "You killed Harry's parents," she said, her voice shaking but determined. "They were obstacles," Voldemort's face replied dismissively. "As you are now, mud-blood." Harry stepped forward, angling himself slightly in front of Hermione. "You won't get the stone." "Oh, but I will," Voldemort said softly. "Quirrell has tried to retrieve it from the mirror, but he has failed. Perhaps you will be more useful." The red eyes gleamed. "Come here, Potter." Harry approached cautiously, mind working furiously. The mirror of Eriste showed one's deepest desire. Dumbledore must have enchanted it somehow to conceal the stone, likely giving it only to someone who wanted to find the stone but not use it. Standing before the mirror, Harry saw himself, smiling. Mirror Harry reached into his pocket and pulled out a blood-red stone, then winked and put it back, and as he did, Harry felt a real weight drop into his actual pocket. Somehow, impossibly, he had gotten the stone. "Well?" Quirrell demanded impatiently. "What do you see?" Harry thought quickly. "I see myself shaking hands with Dumbledore," he lied. "I've won the House Cup." "He lies," Voldemort hissed. "Let me speak to him face to face." "Master, you are not strong enough." "I have strength enough for this." Quirrell turned fully, bringing Voldemort's face directly before Harry. Hermione gasped in horror behind him. "Harry Potter," Voldemort whispered. "I sense another's influence on you, old magic, powerful magic." His red eyes narrowed. "Grindelwald. Somehow, he has reached you." Harry kept his expression neutral, though inwardly he was shocked at Voldemort's perception. "I don't know what you're talking about." "You cannot deceive Lord Voldemort," the face hissed. "I see his plans within you, his revolution, his dismantling of all I sought to control." A terrible smile stretched across the lipless mouth. How amusing that Dumbledore's golden boy should be corrupted by his greatest enemy. Hermione made a small sound of confusion behind Harry, but he didn't dare look at her. "Enough talk," he said coldly. "You won't be getting the stone." "Seize him," Voldemort commanded. Quirrell lunged forward, but Harry was faster. Drawing his holly wand with his right hand while his left secretly grasped his blackthorn wand inside his robes, he cast a spell Mr. Grey, Grindelwald, had taught him specifically for this moment. "Anima Revelio," he shouted. A brilliant white light erupted from his holly wand, but it was the silent spell from his concealed blackthorn wand that carried the real power, a complex dark magic that forcibly separated possessing entities from their hosts. Quirrell screamed as Voldemort's face began to tear away from the back of his head, a smoky, wraith-like form pulling free. The defense professor collapsed to his knees, blood pouring from his nose and ears as the unnatural connection was severed. The wraith that was Voldemort howled with rage, its red eyes fixing on Harry with pure hatred. "What is this magic?" it shrieked. "What have you done?" "Something you didn't expect," Harry said calmly, though his heart was racing. He raised both wands now, no longer hiding the blackthorn. "Captis Spiritus." A golden cage of light formed around the wraith, temporarily containing it. Harry turned to Hermione, who was staring at him with shock and dawning comprehension. "We need to go, now," he said urgently. "This won't hold him long." Quirrell lay motionless on the floor, clearly dead from the violent separation. Harry felt a momentary pang of remorse. The professor had been a victim as much as a villain, but there was no time for reflection. "Harry," Hermione whispered, her eyes fixed on his second wand. "What's happening? Who are you really?" "I'll explain everything," Harry promised, "but not here." We have what we came for. He patted his pocket where the stone lay heavy. Let's go. They ran back through the black flames, which had died down with Quirrell's death, and retraced their steps through the chambers. They found Ron conscious but groggy, supported by Neville and Luna near the chess set. What happened? Ron asked, rubbing his head. Later, Harry said tersely. We need to get out of here now. Voldemort will be free soon. They made their way back to the room with the flying keys, then up through the trapdoor where Fred and George were waiting anxiously. Fluffy, still drowsy from their music, barely stirred as they slipped past and into the corridor. Using the twins' decoys and Harry's invisibility cloak, they managed to return to Gryffindor Tower without detection. The fireworks distraction had long since ended, but the castle remained in disarray, with prefects and professors still investigating the source. In the deserted common room, Harry's inner circle gathered around the fire, exhausted but alert. The Philosopher's Stone sat on the table before them, gleaming ruby-red in the firelight. Start talking, Harry, Hermione said quietly. No more secrets. Who is Grindelwald to you, and what did Voldemort mean about a revolution? Harry looked around at their faces, Ron confused, Neville nervous, the twins intrigued, Luna serene, and Hermione. Hermione looked both afraid and resolute, as though preparing herself for a truth she already suspected but dreaded to hear confirmed. My full name, Harry said finally, is Harry James Potter. I am the boy who lived. He picked up the stone, feeling its power pulse between his fingers. But I am also the secret apprentice of Gellert Grindelwald, and together, we are going to tear down the corrupt Ministry of Magic and build something better in its place. The silence that followed was profound, broken only by the crackling of the fire and the distant chime of the clock striking 3 in the morning. Dawn was still hours away, but a new day had already begun for the wizarding world, though none yet knew it beyond the 7 people in that room. The Philosopher's Stone gleamed in Harry's hand, the first piece in a game that would soon engulf them all. The foundations of power had been laid. The revolution had begun. Chapter 4, The Ministry Falls. Final preparations for the attack. Harry revealing his true power level to his inner circle. Infiltration of the Ministry through multiple points. Battle against Aurors and Ministry officials. Confrontation with the Minister of Magic. Dumbledore's arrival and duel with Harry, where Grindelwald's teachings are evident. The Ministry's collapse and the beginning of magical anarchy. Epilogue showing the immediate aftermath and setting up the New World Order. Final scene of Harry and Grindelwald standing amidst the ruins, planning the next phase. Key antagonist development. Ministry officials represent the corrupt bureaucracy that failed to protect Harry's parents and magical society. Severus Snape, initially suspicious of Harry, becomes a determined investigator trying to prove Harry's dark connections. Albus Dumbledore, the ideological opponent whose past with Grindelwald makes him the most dangerous threat to Harry's plans. The Order of the Phoenix emerges as an organized resistance to Harry's revolution. Long-running subplot, Voldemort's spirit observing Harry's actions from the shadows, initially planning to possess him but becoming both impressed and concerned by Grindelwald's influence. This creates a three-way magical ideological conflict between Dumbledore, greater good through control, Grindelwald, greater good through magical freedom, and Voldemort, magical supremacy through pure-blood rule. Romance development. Harry and Hermione's relationship evolves naturally through shared experiences. Their connection deepens as they both recognize the flaws in the wizarding world. Hermione struggles between her natural respect for authority and her growing loyalty to Harry. Emotional intimacy builds through quiet moments amidst revolution planning. By the end, they stand as partners in reshaping the wizarding world. This detailed outline follows the requested structure and incorporates all the key elements mentioned in the prompt. Each chapter will be written to be at least 10,000 words, with varied pacing, natural dialogue, and a focus on showing rather than telling. The antagonists have clear motivations, the romance develops naturally, and each chapter features different types of conflict. The Secret Apprentice, Harry Potter's Dark Ascension. Detailed story outline. Overall premise. In this dark alternate universe, Gellert Grindelwald never truly remained in Nurmengard. Through ancient magic and decades of planning, he orchestrated a shadow existence, waiting for the perfect vessel to complete his unfinished revolution. When Voldemort's killing curse rebounded off infant Harry Potter, Grindelwald sensed extraordinary magical potential awakening in the boy. After years of suffering at the Dursleys, young Harry is secretly contacted by a disguised Grindelwald who offers him knowledge, power, and the disturbing truth about wizarding corruption. Harry's experiences at Hogwarts only confirm his mentor's teachings: the ministry is irredeemably corrupt, magical beings live in unnecessary subjugation, and the entire system must be dismantled. By Christmas of his first year, Harry has gathered a loyal inner circle and launches a devastating attack on the Ministry of Magic, igniting a revolution that will forever transform the wizarding world. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.